Any advice you'd have for other nurse leaders as they're debating on whether to leave a job or stay at a job, or maybe they have multiple job offers and they're trying to figure out which one?
I would say is you have to assess the culture of the place.
Hmm.
And I also think who the
Yeah.
boss is important. So if
Yeah.
you don't like who your boss is going to be,
Right.
don't do it. It's just not going to be a match made in heaven.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the CNO Podcast. My name is Dave Mayer, and I'm really excited to get a chance today to speak with Rosanne Raso, who's had an amazing 40-year career. She's been a CNO at 5 different hospitals, which is amazing. The New York Community Hospital of Brooklyn, General Hospital, Center of the Passaic, Lenox Hill, Lutheran Medical Center, and then finally where she is now, Cornell Medical Center, which has close to 1,000 beds. She's also right now on the leadership team of the Francis Payne Bolton School of Nursing, and really, really excited to dig in with her and have her share some advice about how she got to become a CNO, what she's been doing throughout her career, and any advice she'd have for any aspiring and current CNO. So thank you so much for coming, Rosanne. Very excited to get a chance to speak with you.
I am thrilled to be here and to chat with you, David.
All right. Great. Great. Good. Well, let's get into it. So I know we're going way back in time, but let's start from the beginning here. What got you into nursing to begin with?
Well, that's not exactly a sexy story. I did not have a mom who was a nurse who inspired me. I did not even have anybody in the family who was a nurse that inspired me. I lived a life of service as a teen. I had no high school guidance into colleges. So I did what somebody in those shoes would do. I went to community college that I could afford, and nursing was a career I thought that I would love as somebody who loved science and loved people. So that's how I got started.
Great. And what hospital did you start at?
I was in the VA system. That was
Oh,
my first
interesting.
job. Yeah. I was
Okay.
there for 7 years.
Oh, wow. And why did you start at the VA?
Well, when I graduated, believe it or not, there was not a nursing shortage and it was difficult to find a job. But I had one job that was offered to me. It was night shift. And then the
Mhm.
VA opened up 5 jobs, and it was days with rotation and it was more money. And I said, sorry, Lutheran. It was Lutheran Medical Center where I ended up going as a chief nurse 20 years later.
Wow.
And hello, VA, and took that position because it was best for me.
Interesting. Interesting. That's great. And, it's one of these things that I'm always kind of fascinated by because I talk to CNOs, and to be a CNO, you have to be a very effective manager. You have to work cross-functionally throughout an organization. It could be very corporate. You have to know how to read a balance sheet, income statement, and it's probably all these things that probably the reason you became a nurse is maybe because you liked taking care of people, not like dealing with a lot of that bureaucracy. So for people to really excel at both being a nurse and then being a manager is really pretty amazing. It's pretty unicorn. And tell me, like, what got you wanting to start thinking about being a manager as opposed to just a bedside nurse? How did that transition evolve?
I think it was seeing role models as a bedside nurse and seeing in those days, the nurse manager was called the head nurse.
Mhm.
Seeing what the head nurse did, how I was just in awe of what she did to keep
Mhm.
the team together, to deal with the physicians, to deal with the families, to run the unit. I mean, that's what you did. And I just was drawn to that. And my first job as a head nurse was in the VA. But then I had a twist, which was I really liked clinical and clinical policy. And I went for my master's in education. And the next job I took after that was as a nurse educator in critical care. Critical care was my specialty. And I was in that. I loved it. I then went to the New York Hospital,
Mhm.
Cornell, as a
Mhm.
clinical nurse specialist for their CCU, where I was very happy doing that kind of work. And then I was tapped on the shoulder
Yeah.
to apply for an assistant director of critical care nursing position. They were creating a new department. They thought I'd be perfect for the job. And I thought, "Oh, really?" I just did not see my career going in that direction, and, well,
Mhm.
I interviewed, I got the job, loved it,
Mm.
and that really jump-started my career into leadership.
Mhm. And how big was the team that you were managing, and what was that role?
Well, it was big. I mean, because the New York Hospital Cornell is at the time, it was maybe 750 beds, now it's 875
Yeah.
beds, but I had half of the critical care department, which
Wow.
was, I think, 5, 6, 7 units, something like that, and
Wow.
maybe 250 people, which seemed a lot at the time. Of
Yeah.
course, that was nothing in hindsight of where my career went after that, but I started out with a pretty large scope and,
Wow.
loved being able to influence in a different way.
And how much time had you spent managing people prior to that? Because I know you had a few different roles and did a few
Well,
different
I
things.
was in these clinical nurse specialist, nurse
Yeah.
educator roles, so I was more teaching and,
Yeah.
rounding and doing things of that. So I was working with people, but
Yeah.
not as a manager.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been around for a while as well. I don't know if I've heard of anyone ever going from basically having 0 direct reports to 250
Right.
overnight. How did you and a lot of the people who are listening today are maybe aspiring CNOs where maybe they'll be in a hospital with 250 nurses. So a lot of times like your first jump into management will be where people ultimately
Mhm.
aspire to be. How did you change your mindset to go from, having to do everything yourself and then having to influence others to get everyone to do things? Like what was that like?
Well, that's a darn good question. You do have the nurse managers of all those units, so you are
Yeah.
working through them.
Yeah.
And I was also working in a brand new department, so it was all new people working together. There was another assistant director, there was a new director, there was a new staffing coordinator, a new QA coordinator. Like we were all a brand new team creating a department where there wasn't any. So there was this very positive energy about teaming.
Yeah.
And I think that helped the transition very much. I mean, honestly, the HR issues when you're dealing with people as a manager are huge. They take up half
Yeah.
your time. It
Yeah.
just does, no matter what level you're at.
Mhm.
And so you learn to partner with HR, you learn to get advice, you learn to like lean into instincts a bit and lean into values and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's funny. I have a technology background. I'll try to read a lot of books about management. There's this one book that talks about how there's the whirlwind that happens every day, and it's most people all you can do is just kind of survive the whirlwind or basically tread water. But you kind of have to carve time to go after these strategic goals. Otherwise, just the daily whirlwind and all the HR stuff will kind of eat you alive. I know you're kind of thinking back, but were there ways that you tried to do that, or when you started this job, did you have any particular goals in mind? It's like, hey, this is what I want this department to look like in a year or two from now.
Oh boy, I don't remember. I mean, we had goals. I'm sure they were, quality excellence and all that good stuff. I
Yeah.
had a research goal that I was able to accomplish. But I think what really helped me is that I was professionally active
Hmm.
outside of my job.
Hmm.
So I was involved with the Critical Care Association, and I had colleagues within there that became mentors and were, you could just run things by and you felt like you weren't alone. And I
Yeah.
grew and I, elevated in leadership. And though I became the president of the Critical Care Nurse Association, and then as my positions progressed, I moved into the Organization for Nurse Leaders. So
Mhm.
my professional organizational alignment started to shift from critical care to nurse leadership. But I really like, in terms of a recommendation for anybody thinking they want to be a CNO or are a CNO or in any leadership position, honestly, I think being involved in professional
Yeah.
organizations is a game changer.
Yeah. Definitely. That's something I see too. Is there are a lot of these state level nurse leadership associations and networking events, and it's great to
Mhm,
see everyone out doing that because you can't be on an island, right? You have to learn from others, and that's really one of the goals of this podcast, right? So
mhm,
great, great.
mhm.
Okay, so we had a lot to get through here. So what was your first CNO position? Talk to me about that. How that came about? How did you decided to take it? Did you have doubts? Talk to me about that.
Well, I did have doubts, but from that position, I moved into a director position in another hospital, and a mentor of mine who I met through we were both mutually involved in a local nonprofit, and
Mhm,
that's how I met her. And she was also a nurse leader. She was actually a COO in
mhm.
another small hospital, but she recommended me for this CNO job in this tiny little community hospital, 120 beds, and I was used to these big places, so
Yeah.
this was like, "Oh, I don't know, like, does that even count to be a CNO in a 120-bed hospital?" And I interview, I get the job, and then I talk to my boss, and I said, "I don't
Oof.
even know if I should take it, like, does this count? Can I do this?" And as much as she did not wanna lose me, I was her informal deputy at this, 500-bed hospital I was at the
Yeah.
time. She said, "It does count, and you should take it." So she let me go, and
Yeah.
that was my first CNO job. And when you're in a hospital that size, and any listeners who are in hospitals that size, the chief nurse is also the COO. You not only have nursing, but you probably have every clinical service. You have pharmacy and radiology and PT and respiratory and who knows what else. I learned so much in that job. It was definitely worth it. It was totally different from being director of critical care. It's just a different amount of responsibility. You're in different circles. It's a different thinking. It's a whole new world.
Yeah, they say if you're not squirming, you're not learning, right? So it's good
Oh,
to
that's a good line. I like that.
keep things. Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting because I think a lot of people in any profession have these kinds of forks in the road, right? And maybe they have a spot where they're comfortable, that they know their boss, they're respected by their boss, things are settled, they know things are going to go well, and that's kind of the steady path. And there's something that comes along that on paper is maybe bigger, maybe better, but there's a lot of unknowns. And I know it all depends on what are people's goal. Do they want stability? Do they want to grow their career? But any advice that you'd have for people who are, at that fork in the road? Like, what was your framework to make you've changed hospitals a few times and roles a few times. Like, what's your framework for making decisions about how to change careers or change, roles?
Yeah. Well, once you get, um, well, sometimes it's forced.
Mhm.
So, for instance, when I was at the General Hospital Center at Passaic, which was double the size of Community Hospital, that hospital was, and I was in a system. I knew that hospital was going to be axed from the system, was going to be taken over by another local hospital, and I knew my days were going to be numbered. So I
Mhm.
started looking. Well, actually, I wasn't looking. I haven't looked for a job in 30 years. Like a job came to me, which was Lutheran Medical Center, and I thought, oh, I think I better interview for this one, and interviewed, got it, and left in time before I didn't have a job.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes it's forced.
Sure.
And then I was at Luther for 10 years. I loved it there. At the time, we were standalone. Now it's NYU Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So it's part of a bigger system. It's a whole different feel.
Yeah.
It's not that one is better than the other. It's different.
Yeah.
Well, maybe NYU would say that it's better, and I'm sure it is for many, many different reasons. But I think my point was I was there for 10 years, thought I was going to retire out of there, raised my son while I was there, and I got a call from Lenox Hill that they were looking
Mhm,
for a new chief nurse.
mhm.
And I thought, oh, well, I am having a year of change. My son was heading to college. My brother and my father had just passed in that year. Like it was a tumultuous
Yeah,
year. And I thought, maybe the universe is speaking to me. I should
yeah,
interview for this job. And I got the
yeah.
job. And I said, yep, I'm going back to the city and I'm going to do this.
Wow.
So that's what happened.
Yeah, that's great. Any advice you'd have for other nurse leaders as they're debating on whether to leave a job or stay at a job, or maybe they have multiple job offers and they're trying to figure out which one? I know it's very much situational, but any like high level advice about how to make those career decisions?
Well, one thing I would say is you have to assess the culture of the place.
Mhm.
So when I was interviewing actually for the Passaic job, I was interviewing for a few and there was one hospital and I was like, I'm not sure I like the feel here." Like it
Yeah,
just like it didn't and I kept making up excuses to go back to interview more people. "Oh, I haven't met the chairman of medicine yet. Oh, I haven't
yeah,
rounded on the units yet. Oh," like, to try and figure out if that was real or not.
yeah.
And it turned out I did not take that job
Mhm.
because whoever I talked to and whenever I rounded, I did not sense enthusiasm about being there or
Mhm.
really caring about patients. Like it just didn't feel like the culture
Yeah,
there matched my values. So I think that's important. And I also think who the
yeah,
boss is important. So if
yeah.
you don't like who your boss is going to be,
Right.
don't do it. It's just not going to be a match made in heaven.
Right. That's
Yeah.
that's amazing advice. Yeah, I found that too in my career that it's really chemistry is important. The chemistry with your boss, because if you don't have a really good working relationship, you could be great individual performers, but if you can't work together, if the quarterback doesn't know how to read the wide receiver, right, then it's just
Hmm.
hard to have a lot of passes and culture is I always admire CNOs and leaders who can turn a culture around because I think I heard
Hmm.
an interview with Charlie Munger, the investor with Warren Buffett, and he had bought a big company, and one of a journalist said, "Hey, how are you going to turn around the culture of the company?" And he said, "I can't even turn around the culture of a diner. There's no way I can turn around the culture of a company. So it can be done, but it's hard." And so I think that's great
It
advice
can
to
be
kind of rethink
done. It
culture.
absolutely I feel like I've done it. I mean, not
Oh,
single-handedly, but, definitely when you're working with like-minded people
yeah.
and you set values and you set behavioral expectations and you set goals and you, stick to it, it changes a place.
That's a great segue. So yeah, talk to me about that, because I think, like, culture is the most important thing, one of the most important things, right, in an organization, yeah, were there particular times in your career that you can remember where you went in and you're able to a affect some change from a culture standpoint?
Yes, I actually think my return to New York Presbyterian
Mhm.
25 years later as chief nurse, I had been there as assistant director and then proceeded to have 4 CNO jobs before I came back as their CNO, which was a dream for me. It was a kindergarten dream,
Wow,
to be the chief nurse of
wow.
New York Presbyterian Weill
Yeah,
Cornell, and to go back there as the chief nurse was, just, amazing to me. And I was hired with the expectation of taking them to magnet designation. They were
mhm,
not magnet designated. Was the number one hospital in the city for years, and they were not magnet designated. So
mm,
doing that is a culture change.
mm,
That is
yeah,
is not just meeting standards. It is transforming the culture to one where nursing is valued, where you're measuring all the right things, you're uh, creating a governance environment where staff can lead at all different kinds of levels, where units can uh, I sometimes the word empower makes me squirm because I think it's overused sometimes, but like empowering people to to do what they think is right and back them up. I mean, there's a million things, professional development, succession planning. I mean, I could go on and on about
Yeah.
all the things involved for a magnet culture, but it's how you lead. It's what you're measuring. It's how you empower people. It's how you advance the science of nursing and what you do. And we achieved magnet designation within 3 years. I think that I got
Wow.
there. I think it was within 3 years, which is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people said to me, "This is a different place. It's a
Wow.
different place." And to me, that's means a different culture.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love it. You were there for almost 8 years. Is that right?
Yes, 8
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
So talk to me. I mean, one of the things that I think that it's great that this podcast can do is really talk about kind of specifics, because there may be CNOs that want to get to magnet status or just want to improve their culture. I mean, who doesn't? Maybe talk to me. You get there, you have this goal in mind. Like, what was the? I know it's a lot, but like, what were like the big things that you think you're most proud of when you got there to enable magnet certification? What were the big initiatives or the big plans or procedures or big hires, or what was that framework and action plan?
Well, it's funny that you asked that question, and I'm not sure if I have the mug here right now, but in my first couple of months, on a piece of paper, just
Hmm.
drew out a chart with months
Hmm.
on the top and initiatives going down the vertical end. And when we would do each
Wow.
one, it was paper and pencil. And that was the beginning of the strategic plan. And I kept it all those years. And when we got designated, my magnet program director made a mug from this to this. And it was a picture of the paper and pencil plan
No
to
way.
everybody screaming and yelling with balloons when we were designated. It was very cute. What were the things that were on there? There were, and again, I worked within a system. There was a
Sure.
lot of benefit working within New York Presbyterian. I mean, you just don't do this alone. And we had, a research scientist part time through the system. We had nursing education was system wide, so that all came from the system. We had what else did we have? So we had a lot. The whole QA program was systemic. It
I
wasn't
know.
at the campus level. So there was a lot that I could draw on from the system, including the shared governance model. We just needed to revitalize what
Right.
existed into something that was actually working.
And
Um,
just because you could draw on something doesn't mean that that team will perform, because they probably don't directly report to you. They probably have a dotted line and report to a lot of different organizations. And so you really have to be a effective leader without actually managing them to actually affect change. That must have been difficult in and of itself.
well, you have to develop all those relationships for sure. Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely critical. And that's another word of advice for all leaders at all levels. It's all about relationships. You don't
yeah.
have those relationships, you are not going to be successful. It's not going to happen.
Let's maybe double click on that for a second, then we'll get back to the strategic goals. Like, I hear a lot of people say relation is important, but I don't hear a lot of advice about how do you develop a good relationship. Like, are there any
Mhm.
principles that you have about actually how to develop good relationships?
Oh, another good question. You just keep coming with them. So, what are my tricks? Well, I guess first of all, you have to be kind of humble, honestly. I think humility is a big it's almost a skill to develop because you have to put yourself out there. You have to meet people. You have to make appointments, meet people, and listen, understand where they're coming from, and then have kind of a give and take relationship. So you help them with something, and then they're going to help you the next time you need something. So
Mhm.
there's a humility to developing relationships. You can't go in arrogant. You can't go in, I know everything. What are you going to do for me? It has to be mutual, and it has to be humble in the beginning for sure, and well, actually all the time, in my opinion. So I guess that's one thing. Um, listening, really listening to people you want to partner with or need to partner with, which is a skill we don't all do well. We make believe we're listening, but really in our heads, we're preparing or have
Hmm.
prepared the answer we want to give without really listening to the whole story. So really using those listening skills, putting yourself out there. You have to be proactive about it. It's not going to come to you and and have the same relationship than if you're proactive about it.
Hmm. And when you say proactive, does that mean not just reaching out to someone you need something, but scheduling, a coffee once a month just to catch up? Or if you see something needs to get someone done, do it for them to build up this kind of goodwill karma bank for
Yes,
them in that
yes.
favor, those kinds of things.
Yeah, if you wait to reach out to somebody to when you need something, no.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think Dale Carnegie said to be interesting, be interested, right? And just people, yeah, I do appreciate when you're interested in their lives and try to help them, because then when you need help, they'll remember that.
yeah. And
So
it's also acknowledging and even celebrating achievements in other departments
mhm.
of other people with your team, and also insisting that your team, um, Mhm. That have relationships as well.
Yeah,
So if I had a director who was really having a hard time with housekeeping and they were in this like really being kind of mean mode, I'm like, no, that's not how we do things. You're going to
yeah,
reach out to your counterpart. You're going to listen. You're going to tell your side of the story. You're going to come up with a plan together. And it's not going to be about being mean.
yeah, yeah. That's all
Yes.
great advice. That's great. Okay, so let's get back to these initiatives. I know you don't have a bug in front of you, but any one or two initiatives that you remember, or like big goals that you had during your time there to kind of get to Magnet, and then how did you accomplish those goals?
Gosh, there were really so many, but one that sticks in my head is in terms of engagement. Well, there's probably two or three, but you have to engage everybody.
Yeah,
So having these like learning sessions for unit count, like expecting that there be a unit council in every unit and there'd be a chair and a co-chair, and then pulling those people into a half day workshop or even a full day workshop and feed them and teach them about magnet principles, about leadership, about what is a unit council, what can you do, what can't you do, what help is there
mhm,
for you, and investing in them, and doing that multiple times. So that's one. Doing that for the leadership team is another
mhm,
thing, and also having town halls, like really opening up communication with everybody. That's another critical thing.
hmm. What kind of so you talked about town halls and meetings. Did you also try to send out a weekly email wrap up, or did
Oh,
you?
I was just going to say that in terms of communication, another thing was I started a newsletter that came from me
Yeah.
that was called, oh, I forgot the name of it now. The CNO something. I
Right.
don't remember, but whatever it was called, it was a newsletter from me. It was monthly. And I had, help. I didn't write the whole thing myself, but I wrote a letter to everybody, and we had, achievements and celebrations and what's coming up and tidbits you need to know and whatever it was. And it started out as something printed,
Hmm.
and posted, and then it became this amazing on a platform where you link into it, and it just went on and on. Same concept, but more contributors. Certainly a letter from me, and that was monthly for all those years.
Hmm. That's great. Yeah, definitely that kind of consistent drumbeat of communications, I think, is so important. I live in San Francisco, and we have a new mayor in San Francisco, and I follow him on Instagram, and he's constantly posting about the restaurants that he's seen that have started in San Francisco, or the events that he's at, and he calls into San Francisco sports radio shows when I'm listening in the morning, and he's posting, hey, here are the things that are going well, here are the things that we need to work on, and just this idea of being everywhere, because everyone is doing a lot of things, but if a tree falls in a forest and no one's there to hear it, did it even fall, right? And so you're doing all this work and building all these relationships and doing all these good things, but if if you have thousands of nurses that are reporting to you, not to mention everyone else in the health system and all the other cross-functional partners, if they're not there to see it, then they don't know what you're doing. But if you're constantly putting out all this information, you're actually building momentum, you're building culture,
Yeah,
and,
that's very
and
true. We also started a social media presence at that
oh,
time,
great.
Instagram and Twitter at the time. And we had a contest for our hashtag. And the winner, I forgot what the winner got, but it was hashtag while Cornell Nursing Proud. Was the first hashtag.
All
And we
right.
used that on all our social communications for years.
That's great. That's great. Maybe we can touch on, so we've talked about, how do you uh, manage downs of your team and establishing the town halls and the groups and relying on your direct reports, managing cross-functionally in the health system. How do you do that? Talk about your relationships that you've had with your boss, with the CEO, right? Who probably maybe wasn't clinical, definitely wasn't a nurse, right? Is worried about the bottom line, and like, how do you, any advice you'd have for current CNOs, aspiring CNOs? How do you kind of, work with the CEO and make sure that your voice is heard and your organization's voice is heard, and also be,
Yeah, I mean, you have to learn about how that person wants to be communicated to. What are their hot topics? Like, what do they need updates on every week at every one-to-one? You want to meet their needs and you want to make them look good.
Mhm.
That's a big part of the job, making the boss look good. So, and
And,
meeting,
yeah,
organizational goals. So, really having especially for one-to-ones, being really attentive to what that person wants and needs. I think that's important. What their style is. Do they like direct? Would they rather round and hear things indirectly? Would they, what their style is? And you really have to get to know that. Invite them to your town halls, whether if they can't make it, invite them in as much as possible. Award ceremonies. I'm going to do a Daisy Award. If you want to come, it's going to be tomorrow at 10:30. Like, just invite them, so there's it feels more like a partnership.
yeah, yeah. That's great advice. That's great advice. And just to kind of end the conversation, we could go on forever, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. But you're at the end of your career now, right? You've had this great uh, uh, accumulation of knowledge and experience, and some of our listeners are just starting out in the CNO role, or maybe have just been there. What advice would you have for them?
Hmm. Oh boy. Well, I gave a lot along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
Anything else?
also thinking, oh, there's so many things. But maybe if I had to say one thing that I haven't said already, it would be about balance. That, like, trying to find that balance between work and life is one of them. And it's not going to be a matter of hours. It's going to be about a matter of contentment, on both sides of your life. And there's balance between humility and arrogance. You want to be, in between. There's a balance between, like, being a transformational leader and a transactional leader. You kind of have to do both. So you
Mhm.
have to find your balance there. So, and there's many, many continuums. But I think that would be my last word of advice, finding your balance.
Right. It's always hard to do, but it's a never ending process.
Mm.
Great. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I think our listeners will as well. And thank you so much for taking the time.
You're welcome. This was fantastic. You are a whiz with asking tough questions, and I'm glad I got through it.
Yeah, yeah, you made it. You made it.
All right,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thanks, Roseanne.